I'm Becky Goldsmith from Piece of Cake, and I would like to thank you for joining me this week for Time Out. If you remember from last week, I'm not actually here in real time right now this minute. I'm in New York on vacation, but I did pull myself together and get this recorded for you before I left. And let me tell you that behind me on the design wall, it's still Birds in Toyland because there is still time to sign up for the next Birds in Toyland class. It will be group number 4 that begins on September 9th. You can sign up at Creative Spark online. There's links on my website, or you can Google it. The pattern for this quilt will not be available until around May of 2022, but it is part of the class. And it's a fun class. I hope to see you there. All right, today I'm talking to you about how to make yourself cut special fabric. So let me go here. Oops, I got to go back. All right, so I had this much left. I had more of the fabric, but I've used it. But I had about a yard of that big piece of sky fabric. It's designed by Jennifer Sampou for Robert Kaufman. And so is that other piece off to the side. That's just a different colorway of the same sky fabric. All right, I've had this, and you've had some maybe, or fabric similar to this, and you can't make yourself cut it because you don't know what you're going to do with it. So I looked at this and I thought, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it this week, and I've got a really short time frame. So what am I going to do? Okay. I cut it into strips. So I didn't cut all of it to start with, and I cut 3-inch strips because they're bigger, and because when you cut bigger strips, you lose less of the yardage to the seam allowances, right? If you cut 1.5-inch strips, there's more seam allowances because there's more strips, so it shrinks more. And I didn't want this to shrink that much because I knew I was using it for this purpose, and I wanted to have something kind of usable. As you can see behind me, it made a big enough piece. All right, so I cut the fabric. On the far right there, those strips, you'll see they're turned backwards facing, and that's because I wanted to mention that when I started sewing together strips in pairs, which is what I did, I pressed to the dark. Well, at the top of the strip set, the dark was on one side, and at the bottom it's on the other. So I pressed to the dark and left the center unpressed so that I could press it whichever direction I needed to during construction. And I just started with one strip set because I wasn't positive exactly what I was going to do at that time. I cut my strip set into 3-inch 2-piece units, 2 square units, because my strips are 3 inches. All right, this next video shows me alternating the units. So I alternated those 2-piece light dark units, and then I moved them over closer to the strips. Actually, that's not what I did. I moved the strips over closer to the little units. And I gave it a look, and I thought about, did I want to make more squares? Did I want to play with strips? At each step, you can go in an unlimited number of directions. But I decided to keep it simple because I was working in a short time frame. the next thing I did was start playing with those strips and arranging them on the wall, shifting how the colors blended, because initially in this slide those strips are arranged as they were cut from the 2-strip unit. So here I'm playing with the units, shifting where the colors are. And in this slide, I moved the much darker values to the bottom, the more medium values to the top, and left the turquoise in the center. And then I decided, what the heck, I would just make a bunch more squares, because I could have, at this point, I could have kept one pieced unit and then started playing with vertical strips. I could have varied the width of the vertical strips. I could have taken the pieced unit, instead of vertical, I could have turned it horizontal. There are a lot of things I could have done right here that I chose not to do. So as you saw, I decided to make more 4-patch units. And as I made more 4-patch units, so I would sew together more strips, press, cut them apart, sew them into squares, playing with the placement of the 2-piece units before I sewed them into 4 patches. I started playing with how I might want to arrange things. And you can go so many different ways. Now, right here, I was changing the pattern, putting 4 dark squares together rather than letting it each row alternate light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. I started turning them to form a pattern. And if I had been working with smaller 4 patches, or if I had a whole lot more fabric, I might have really liked this. But I knew it was not going to look particularly good with the fabric amounts that I had, so I gave that idea up. And I arranged my squares so that each 4-patch had its darkest fabric in the upper left, lower right. And from there, I started playing with the placement of the 4 patches. And you can see that I had these random pieces of fabric just hanging out, and I decided to play with them just a little bit. So on a very few of the 4 patches, I sliced and inserted a strip, or as you can see on the upper right, I had a random kind of spare 2-patch unit that I cut into and inserted into that 4-patch. I got enough made that I decided I liked having the very high contrast light dark in the upper left, and I liked the more purple blue in the lower right, and I liked the mid-value turquoise running in a diagonal from the upper right to lower left. From there, I worked with strips that I had already cut to surround them to make a border. And where I put the light ends of the strips and the dark ends of the strips really changed the way the quilt looked. It's very different. And I had a little bit more of the purple blue fabric, and I liked it on this side, accentuating that darker corner. That. Did you notice? Okay, you go back here. It's not really different, except that it is. I had these 2 extra blocks, and I thought to myself, why not cut them apart on the diagonal and sew them together for something a little bit more interesting? I thought I would really like it. And if you just look at that one block, it's pretty subtle on its own. But I did not like it here at all. because everything else is so strongly horizontal and vertical, that angle, that diagonal, it just bothered me a whole lot. So I ended up not using it. I tried it in different places. I just didn't like it. And I also thought, I had a little tiny strip of that purple fabric. I thought I would insert it in that border on the left, and I wish I had, but I can tell you right now I forgot all about it. So it didn't get inserted. Sometimes a good idea gets forgotten. It's not just abandoned, it was forgotten. All right. Then I knew I needed this to be bigger because the 4 patches would finish 5 inches. The borders on either side together would add another 5 inches. I wanted this to be a little bit bigger because it will be a donation quilt. So I went in and I thought, let's keep it easy. Let's keep it easy. Let's find some fabric that might work. And this wasn't bad. It's not bad. I pulled this other fabric with the birds and the dots, and I don't know why, but I liked it better. So I cut it, and I got 2 sides attached, and I got the birds on the bottom, and I looked at it and I thought, I do not like that. And I know why I don't like it. Color-wise, it's not bad. Color-wise, it works. It's that the outside fabric has a very whimsical attitude, and the interior of the quilt, to my eye, is not the least bit whimsical. And so the 2 kinds of fabric together, they're not working for me. Now, they might work for somebody, but they weren't working for me, and they weren't working for me bad enough. Remember the rippers I showed you last week? Oh yeah, I pulled out my ripper. I used my rippers. And then when I was searching for what else I might put on it, this is a really nice fabric that should have worked, but I didn't like it either. And then I pulled this fabric, which is one that I don't find a use for very often. It's it's from the Netherlands, I think. I can't remember. I should remember where it's from. It was an expensive batik fabric that I've had in my stash for 15 to 20 years. Every now and then it's perfect for something. It was like it almost worked, but it wasn't good enough for me to cut this fabric. So then I went back to my scraps, what the little bit I had left of the sky fabric, and I decided that it would look nice with narrower strips to the outside. And that's what I ended up doing. You'll notice that the light dark areas that I put together here are somewhat different than the light dark areas that led up to this. So it ends with light corners, upper left, lower right, and dark upper right, lower left. I think it's an interesting kind of balance, counterbalance. It's an interesting counterbalance to the design as a whole. I'm not entirely sure what kind of binding will go to the outside. I think it does need a binding. So remember through all this that I started with unlimited possibilities. Here, I could have kept it just strips, and I could have interspersed the purple inside the other strips. I could have lost the kind of purpley blue fabric altogether and cut strips in a variety of widths and just used the one fabric. I could have made little tiny squares and run little tiny squares in and amongst that somewhere. I could have interspersed squares inside pear strips. The possibilities are endless, which may be why sometimes it is so hard to cut fabric like this, because you have to decide. And I'm here to tell you that you can decide, you really can. And once you start cutting, it gets easier. Keep an open mind and have fun with it, because you did not buy this fabric to leave it in the closet till the end of time. You bought it because you liked it. Now, let me also add here, because I didn't even say, I've just been piecing this. These also make wonderful backgrounds for applique, truly wonderful backgrounds for applique, and they are, in many cases, wonderful sky fabrics to use either in pieced landscapes or applique landscapes. Where do you find this wonderful fabric? I will tell you where. You can shop at your local quilt shop, or if you just Google Sky Fabric by Jennifer Sampou, you will find it. And it's not just in typical sky colors. There's a full range of colors with more coming. I don't carry it on my website. I'm just telling you, this is where you can go to find this. This week it's an inspirational kind of presentation. So let me go here. See, it's me. I was being inspirational from New York. Trust me, that's where I am, being inspirational. So I hope you enjoyed this. It's a little shorter than 30 minutes, but really that's good. It gives you more time now to shop for some ombre sky fabric, and or go to your stash and look for other kinds of fabrics that you have that would work just like this. If you have things you'd like me to cover, and a few of you have emailed me with ideas, and I really appreciate it, email things you'd like me to talk about on Wednesdays to becky.pieceofcake@gmail.com. And I will see you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Central Time. And you know, I've decided what I'm going to tell you. On this trip, I plan to take pictures with my phone to share with you, to show you what traveling is like now as we come out of the pandemic. Because I think a whole lot of you are like me. You're kind of ready. You're going to do it, but you'd like to have a little more information to know what to expect. Next week, I'm going to tell you what I found to be true on the trip that I will be on after I film this, but that I am on while you're watching. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and until I see you again, may you have many happy stitches. Bye-bye.